What's up YouTube, Christo here, back with another vinyl collection video. I want to give a big thank you to all of my subscribers. I don't have many, but I'm very appreciative of every single one I have. Much like my fragrance channel, I'm not particularly fussed about appealing to the mainstream, especially with like low quality, with videos with little or no editing. I don't really care. It's more that this is just like a true, genuine hobby of mine, and I like sharing it with people, and I like people sharing their thoughts, ideas, etc. with me. So that's all that it's about. Whether I have 40 subscribers or 40,000 or whatever, as long as people appreciate what I'm doing, that's all that really matters. So anyways, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, I always appreciate it. Let's get into this, because this is an artist that I absolutely love, absolutely no question, one of my kind of life-altering musical experiences in my life. I'm going to be talking about Smog, aka Bill Callahan. I'm not really going to get into Bill Callahan records, basically because I'm really not into his solo career stuff. More just, it's not really what I got into Smog for, but maybe I'll address that at another time. Now I'm going to cut this into two. I'm going to cut this into 12 inches EPs and LPs. Then after, I've got, this isn't full of Smog 7 inches, but I've got quite a few in here. Then hopefully immediately after that, I've got one of the best punk metal bands ever, His Hero Is Gone, and a absolutely amazing Canadian artist, Destroyer. I'm going to do that for my vinyl collection after this, so stay tuned. But for now, it's going to be Smog 12-inch EPs and LPs. Now, these aren't in any particular order if you haven't seen any of my other vinyl collection videos. It's more just them spaced out in an order that will keep people interested. So it's kind of like, their big names or their popular ones or their cult tracks, albums mixed in with the lesser known, perhaps lesser liked, lesser positively reviewed albums, just kind of like that. So there's no order here. It's not like favorite to least or least to most, chronological, nothing like that. Just pretty much an order I thought that would be optimum to keep interest. So first record, Knock Knock. This is fairly accessible. A lot of Smog's records have been reissued quite recently. Not all of them, but quite a few, especially the LPs. Not as many of the EPs have been repressed, but this one has been easy to find. You can get it for really good prices, and it's a really good album. I think this is a really good starter point for Smog fans or new Smog fans. It's well produced, the musicianship is great, and there's some really nice songs on here. A personal favorite of mine, without a doubt, is Teenage Spaceship. I actually have quite a nostalgic connection to that song. Cold-Blooded Old Times, River Guard, Hit the Ground Running, really great tracks on here. I don't think I would put this in my top Smog records, but overall this is really solid, and I think it's a really good record. Basically, like almost all Smog records, this and pretty much everything else is on standard black vinyl. There are a couple exceptions here and there, but pretty much everything is just standard black pressing. So, since you all know what a black record looks like, I'm not really going to bother getting them out. But yeah, this is a really solid record. I don't know if it's a gatefold. No, it's not even a gatefold. I don't know if many of them are, actually. I know most do come with inserts, but I can't think of any gatefolds other than like the 2-disc sets that, come off the top of my head. But there we go. Okay, this is another really good album. This I would probably list in my favorite Smog albums ever, though. Again, there's a lot of nostalgia connected to this with me. I think Bill Callahan is really good at that with his kind of very deep, dark, often esoteric lyrics. He does come off, I think, as, you know, setting like kind of a time and a place for his music, and this really brings back a lot of memories for me. Interesting, I bought this while I was on holiday in Canada from Indonesia, where I used to live, and this actually reminds me quite a lot of both Canada and Indonesia, which is really interesting because there's very few records I have that do that, and this is one. Man, a song off here, Our Anniversary, very nostalgic for me, kind of an old relationship. It ended, of course. It was a very strange one, but yeah, definitely reminds me of that. True Serum is great. Butterflies Drowned in Wine. Vessel and Vein, such a great record, honestly. This has definitely got more of that alt country feeling that his later records have, but I think this is of his alt country. A lot of people are going to be angry if I don't mention Red Apple Falls, but I think I might actually prefer this to that, but I'll address that later. Great record. Again, reissued recently and available for very good price. Forgotten Foundation. This is a very different record. Like, comparing this, like his most well-produced, well-polished music, to this is like completely different artists. This is very lo-fi, very jangly, very abrasive. I know some people that absolutely hate this record because there are parts that are just so difficult to listen to, and I agree with them to a point, but this is just a totally different Smog era. Like I said, it's virtually a completely different artist. I think this is good. It's not the kind of album I can just sit and kind of like listen to and like snap my fingers or whatever. It does take very dedicated listening. It is a pretty hard listen. But there are some great tracks on this. I'm going to be honest, I probably only listened to the record maybe 2 times since I picked it up. But this was actually the first CD I bought of Smog, like actual CD, original copy. Some friends had like burned some Smog records for me, but this was, I think, I'm quite sure this was the first Smog CD I ever owned. And yeah, I had come from like Rain on Lens and Knock Knock to this as like, wow, that's totally different. Actually took me a long time to digest, but if you're into abrasive lo-fi, this is a pretty good record. Cheap as well. You can get that, I think, for less than 20 bucks on Amazon. Okay, now this very important record for me for Smog. This is actually the first album I listened to without even really knowing who Smog was or anything about him or the band or the, you know, record or anything. I remember just driving around with my friend, again, like really nostalgic, soon after I broke up with like my first serious girlfriend in high school, and yeah, she was playing this in her stereo in her car, and I was really into like electronic, as we called it back in the 90s, kind of electronic, maybe not quite industrial, but yeah, Justice Aversion came on. I was like, wow, this is really cool. What is it? Because Justice Aversion does definitely have like a very electronic feel to it, and yeah, she's like, oh, it's a band called Smog. And there were a few other tracks I kind of remembered, but that really stood out to me. Since then, though, Dress Sexy at Your Funeral, or Dress Sexy at My Funeral, is such an amazing track, and my favorite Smog song ever from any album, from any era, is Blood Flow. Like, it is just the most amazing track. I get goosebumps when I listen to it, even like the middle of the day in the summer. This one has been reissued recently as well. It is a little bit more expensive because it is a double LP set, so it is a bit more, but still, you can get it for good prices if you look around. Kicking a couple around, this is actually the most expensive, I believe the most I paid for a Smog record, because it hasn't been reissued since the mid-90s. when is this from? 95. Yeah, okay. Yeah, 95. And this is the Domino, I believe. Yeah, Domino. The other American version was pressed on Drag City. I got this shipped from, I think, the UK. And this is a really good record. I did get it more for completing the collection, but there is the first track, Your New Friend, is really great. It is kind of goofy, and again, it reminds me a bit of high school. It's kind of like nostalgic, kind of bad poetry that like an art student would write in high school because their girlfriend left them. I'm not saying that I would write poetry like that, but when you listen to it, it doesn't really rhyme. There's not much flow to it. It is kind of like weird crooning or whatever, but it's still a really nice song. It's quite beautiful. Don't let that take it away. And the B-side's really good as well on this. I think overall this is a good record. Unfortunately, quite expensive because it hasn't been pressed in 22 years or whatever. The Doctor Came at Dawn. I have to admit this is one of my least favorite albums. There are a few really good tracks on here. You Moved In, again, very nostalgic kind of ex-girlfriend song for me. Very, very dark, and man, that's really depressing stuff. And Lies, which is a little bit more happy, even though it's about, you know, lying to your significant other and all that stuff. But for the most part, this album doesn't particularly tickle me. It's okay. Side A is far superior to side B in my opinion, but that's more because it has You Moved In and Lies on it. Again, reissued quite recently. You can pick it up for quite good. The Doctor Came at Dawn. I don't even know if I mentioned that. Wow. Lo-fi masterpiece right here. Julius Caesar. What an amazing album. The B-side goes off the rails a little bit. It gets a little bit too lo-fi for me. But side A on here is just hit after hit after hit. Strawberry Rash, Your Wedding, 37 Push-Ups, Stalled in the Tracks, One Less Star, Golden, When You Walk. All just amazing, amazing, amazing tracks. Side 2, I don't like the I Am Star Wars track. Connections, I think, is bad. I think it's hard to listen to. When the Power Goes Out, it's pretty difficult to listen to as well. Chosen One, that's good, but then it goes off the rails again with What Kind of Angel, but makes up for it with Stick in the Mud. Yeah, the side A on this is just awesome. Just such a great, eclectic, lo-fi, you know, portion of a record. I think it's well worth it. And I have friends who really like the B-side. It's just not for me. I definitely prefer the maybe more, you know, emotional A-side, more poetic A-side, but brilliant. And again, recently reissued, available, very, very, you know, appropriately priced. This has been out of print for a long time, Burning Kingdom. Now, it's funny because actually one of the first tracks I ever heard from by Smog, way, way, way back in the Napster days, like late 90s, I believe was My Shell and Renee Died. Now, the My Shell that's on here is a different version. The one I think is a John Peel session. This one's a little different, not as good in my opinion. This is the electric version. Renee Died is really beautiful, though, very dark. Very somber track. The rest of it is okay. Like, it's not bad, but this one, I don't know, it's kind of expensive because it hasn't been issued since 94. I don't think this has been reissued or repressed or anything. There were two pressings, like a North American and a European one, but it's still not easy to come by. It's great. I needed it just, you know, for my collection, and there are a few good tracks in here. I think the album art is pretty awesome as well. Okay, admittedly, this is my least favorite Smog record. I bought this way back on CD, probably early 2000s, when I really got into them, and I just can't get into it. Wild Love. I don't know. There's a few tracks in here that are good. Bathysphere, the opening track, that in my opinion is the best song on here. And there's a few here and there that are good, but I found it kind of sounds more like it comes off as, I don't know, like a soundtrack for like a romantic fantasy film or something. I don't know. There's just something about this album that kind of comes off as really novelty-esque. It doesn't really do much for me. I have it on MP3 as well on my phone, and I almost never listen to it, even though I listen to Rain on Lands and Knock Knock and Dongs of Devotion quite regularly. That one just doesn't come up. Which brings me to my number one Smog record. Like, no question. I've had like maybe secondary favorites that change quite a lot, but this is just something else. To me, this is his only perfect 10 out of 10, flawless start to finish. There's other records that I'd say are very easy to listen to start to finish, but this album just keeps me gripped and, you know, just listening attentively the whole time. You know, I'm going to list songs that are good, but I'm basically going to list the whole album. I do have to say Dirty Pants, I don't know, the imagery in that song, like, again, it gives me goosebumps, and it, you know, takes me back, like, very nostalgic as well. This is reissued not too long ago. It's not as easy to find or not as cheap as the others to find, but it is still out there, and I think if you are familiar with Smog but maybe don't know any of his records, this one might be a little bit darker, deeper of a record to get into, but this is like an absolute 100% must from Mr. Callahan. This is, like I said, this is a flawless 10 out of 10 to me, and I will not say that often. Like, I really don't. This is a really good compilation, Accumulation None. Basically B-sides, rarities, things from sessions, things from splits, and things like that. But it's pretty good. A lot of the stuff, to be honest, is available on other 7-inches. There's a few that aren't, but for the most part, a lot of this is available elsewhere. I do have a lot of it elsewhere, but for the collection, and I did pick this up before I picked up a lot of his splits and 7-inches and stuff, and I really like the album art. It's like a painting of a boat, but the glass is cracked, which I think is cool. I owned this on CD back in the day, and I really liked it. Very dark, quite a good mixture of his more lo-fi and then a little bit more well-produced. I don't think it encompasses his newer stuff, though. Okay, 3 more. Zone of the Sky. Unfortunately, this is a Drag City reissue. It isn't the original. My mind lapses me. I can't remember what the original pressing was on, but it was not Drag City. However, this is still a pretty weird, cool, lo-fi record. I actually say this is even more listenable than Forgotten Foundation, even though this precedes it by a little bit. There's a few tracks on here that are really cool. I remember, what is it, Polio Shimmy? Yeah, Polio Shimmy is a really cool track. A little bit more rockin' than a lot of stuff on here. This is a good album. Unfortunately, this hasn't been reissued recently, so it is still kind of hard to find. It is a bit expensive. Great record. I actually have a Zone of the Sky tattoo on my arm. It's a little bit different, but yeah, this is a really great record for me. The tattoo's actually more of a reference to the track from Teenage Spaceship, but this one right here, this gem here, Red Apple Falls. A lot of Smog fans actually cite this as their favorite. I think this is a phenomenal record, but I don't think it would be my favorite. And like I mentioned, I'd actually say I prefer Supper more for the more alt country or neo country era. This definitely was his first album where, like, the alt country sound really came out. Like, there's a lot of slide guitar and steel guitar on this, which is cool. I like it. It sounds really great, and it's kind of a nice change from his other sounds. Like, Bill Callahan seems to, you know, very effectively change his sound every couple records, but he does it so smoothly and without effort. Nobody really seems to notice or at least care. It's not like artists that try desperately to stay relevant and they have to change their sound, you know, just to keep people listening. But Mr. Callahan does it so well, and you know, he kind of assimilates to these genres like perfectly. Now, there's some really great tracks on this. Blood Red Bird really stands out. To Be of Use, very dark but happy at the same time. But the song that really stands out in this, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because I have the single, is Ex-Con. Ex-Con stands out for a few reasons, partially because it sounds totally different than anything on this record, but it is also an amazing track. But stay tuned because I have the 7-inch, and I will definitely lay a lot of praise on that track later. Last one, this one definitely an earlier alt country sound. I think this might even predate Red Apple Falls, but this is just an EP. Only 5 tracks on here. It's good. To me, Kicking a Couple Around is better, even though they have very different sounds. But for a Smog EP, I think this is kind of in the middle. It's good. Not my favorite. Wouldn't really be my favorite, even as a full-length record or anything. But it's okay, and again, you know, to help complete the collection. This, like the other EPs, has not been pressed since it was first released, so it is definitely a lot more rare than his full-length albums, or most of his full-length albums that you know, have been repressed quite recently. So there you go, Smog, Bill Callahan. Absolutely no question, one of my all-time favorite artists. Very, very special connection to me. Very happy to have almost all of his records, but you know, stay tuned. Check out my 7-inch collection of Smog and some more that I've got coming up real soon. So thanks for watching, everyone, and see you around.